Let's talk about this picture. This photo was first created in 1986 by Clifton Burkowski. It was supposed to be a part of a larger psychological experiment. Burkowski had interviewed over 490 patients, and he had a sketch artist in the room with him. He asked all of them to describe the most traumatic moments of their lives and who they would point to as the villain in that story and then describe them. As part of this took months. There were all of these pictures. They were all uploaded into a database and then superimposed together to create one picture. It was a picture that he called Sin 90. Since 86, the phenomenon of this photo is that if you look at it for prolonged periods of time, almost every subject feels unease. There are even reports of people who look at this too long who go into a psychosis, and we don't know why.
The Boy in the Walls, Daniel J. LaPlante.
As a teenager, LaPlante regularly broke into people's homes and left a trail of destruction in his wake. In 1986, the teenager began stalking and tormenting a family of three, a single father and his two daughters, Annie and Jessica Andrews. The girls began receiving phone calls from a boy who claimed to be a teenager in their neighborhood. He charmed the young women and eventually convinced Annie Andrews to go on a date with him. Upon first meeting each other in person, Annie was taken aback by how he looked, but not in a good way. On the phone, Daniel LaPlante had described physical features far from his real self. It was akin to a catfish. Still, Annie agreed to go for ice cream. When the date ended, Annie had no interest in pursuing the relationship further. It's widely reported that one night, the sisters performed a seance, an attempt to contact the dead. What they weren't aware of was that Daniel LaPlante had broken into their home and was knocking on the walls, making sounds that the sisters initially thought was their late mother responding to them. According to multiple reports, this tormenting went on for 2 months. The sisters had told their dad about what they had heard, but Brian Andrews attributed that to them not dealing well with their mother's death. Then one night in 1987, Brian came home and went into Annie's room. He was confronted by a frightening sight. A young boy stood dressed in the clothing of Brian's deceased wife. He was wearing her makeup, a dress, and blonde wig. In one of his hands was a hatchet. A struggle proceeded, but LaPlante escaped before police later found him in a hidden crawl space behind a cupboard which was built into the wall of Annie Andrews' bedroom. LaPlante was arrested and charged. He was released from a juvenile facility in October 1987.
These guys were out exploring when they caught a demon on camera. Take a look.
Those footsteps. Damn it! Video back. When I look back at the video, you could see that he didn't look like himself, but that's not how he looked through my eyes. Maybe that's what the camera caught.
I think they forgot to mention this shadow figure that's controlling your friend, bud. That's not your friend anymore. He's gone. That is not your friend. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, follow me on YouTube for more spooky content. Do it now.
This story really tripped me up, so I suggest that you stay until the end. This was submitted by Sarai. I went ahead and tagged her down below. So when Sarai was 22 years old, she was living in San Diego. She had just gotten out of the Navy and was looking for a place to get her hair done. Being that she's not from San Diego, she wasn't very familiar with the area, so she decided to just go online and look up hair salons. After she ran her search, she found one that had pretty good reviews, so she decided to call them and make an appointment. On the day of her appointment, Sarai got dressed and went on her way. When she got to the address, she found that it was a department store that had the hair salon inside of it, almost like how Ulta has it. When she got there, she noticed that there was just one lady running the whole place by herself. Sarai found that to be a bit odd, but the lady confirmed her name and her time for her appointment, so she just went with it. The appointment went how you would expect. One thing that really threw off Sarai was that this lady was asking her personal questions. It was almost like she knew her. She asked about her brothers, her sister, her parents. She even asked about her nephew who has autism. Sarai is not a very confrontational person, so she decided to just politely answer the lady's questions. Then these random teens came into the shop and the lady started to speak to the spirits, asking the spirits to protect her from these teens. Sarai found that to be extremely odd, but being that her hair was in the middle of being processed, she decided to just ignore it. She then asked Sarai about her boyfriend and told her that they were gonna get married and have a beautiful marriage. They would also have 3 kids and that it would be a really long time until Sarai would come back to California. Once her hair was finally done, she was relieved and anxious to get out of there. Once she got home, she noticed that she had a missed call and a voicemail from the hair salon that she had made the appointment with. The voicemail said that they were wondering where she was at because she never showed up to her appointment. This really freaked Sarai out. A few days later, she went back to the salon and she could not find it anywhere. The place was completely gone. It was almost like it never existed. She ended up calling her family to tell them about her bizarre experience. But the lady was right. Sarai did in fact marry her boyfriend. They have been married for 8 years, have 3 daughters, and she has yet to go back to California.
If you scare easily, keep scrolling because this is one of Earth's scariest places, part 58. The place above me is the Husky Castle, located in the Czech Republic. This place has a long history of death, torture, and hauntings. This place was built on a giant bottomless pit. This led locals to say that the castle wasn't built for protection, but it was built to seal off a gateway to hell. On top of that, for centuries, the castle was used to torture and house prisoners. One of the most chilling tales attached to Husky Castle is the Black Monk. The Black Monk is a half-animal, half-human-like creature that terrorizes visitors to the castle. On top of that, the prisoners who lost their lives here are also reported to haunt the halls. Visitors have reported hearing screams and pain. If that's not creepy enough, the architecture alone just says haunted.
There are some crazy coincidences that you won't believe actually happened. Shortly before their wedding, Nick and Amy decided to go through Nick's baby photos. In this picture of him playing at the beach during a vacation, Amy noticed herself in the background 11 years before they met. Violet Giuseppe was a ship nurse on the 3 sister ships, the Titanic, Britannic, and Olympic. She was on board the Olympic when it collided with a warship and almost sank, when the Titanic hit an iceberg and sank, and when the Britannic hit an underwater mine and also sank. She survived all 3. The last person who died constructing the Hoover Dam was the son of the first person who died constructing the Hoover Dam. But the creepiest part is they both died on December 20th in different years.
The story that I'm about to share is extremely dark, having to do with D words, so don't have this playing out in your space. Put on your AirPods, headphones, whatever you have. This story was submitted by Liliana. I went ahead and tagged her down below. When Liliana was about 3 years old, her and her family moved into this huge house located in Cleveland, Ohio. When Liliana's grandfather went to look at the home, he was horrified when he walked into the basement and saw hundreds of bugs being pinned to the wall with dates written under them. This made him have second thoughts on buying the home, but being that it was so cheap and it was so large, he decided to purchase it. The home was built over 100 years ago. They later found out that it was actually built on top of a graveyard. When she was little, she would see random things like lights flickering or doors opening by themselves, but her mom ended up getting the worst of it. Her mom would wake up in the middle of the night to this tall, dark D word just standing at the foot of her bed, watching her while she slept. One night, this thing got on top of her and started to choke her. She ended up having to go to the hospital because she was having serious breathing problems. And the whole way to the hospital, she kept feeling this thing still trying to choke her. After this, they decided to call a pastor to come to the home. The minute the pastor stepped foot in the house, he fainted. He told them there was something extremely dark in this home and that they needed to move. Unfortunately, they couldn't afford it, so they had no choice but to stay. By the time Liliana was 4, she started to sleepwalk. Her mom would randomly find her just standing at the top of the stairs, just staring down at her. One night, she even had a vision of walking into the attic and seeing a family of 5 being unalived in a horrific way. After this, Liliana could not sleep alone, so she started to sleep with her pet Chihuahua, until one night she woke up and her pet was no longer with us. She believes that the thing that was in this home may have possessed her to do something to her dog. One night, Liliana's whole family was downstairs while she was upstairs by herself, when out of nowhere she started to see the closet door slowly open and this thin, red, creepy looking hand creep out and scratch the door. The minute it did this, the light started to flicker and Liliana ran downstairs screaming at the top of her lungs. The minute she went downstairs, her whole family heard a door slam upstairs. When her dad went to check, he couldn't find anyone. They ended up moving out of the house a week later. At this point, Liliana's father started suffering from lung disease and was in and out of the hospital. One night, Liliana woke up to this very evil-looking woman in a hospital gown with long jet black hair staring at her. 2 weeks after that dream, they got the call that her dad had been put on life support. I'm gonna have to do a part 2.
Obama is actually the most hated president of all time. And let me explain to you why, okay?
That's crazy. I feel like everyone loves Obama.
Right, a lot of people do, but okay, so let me tell you about his assassination attempts, okay? These are some crazy Obama assassinations that nobody knows about. Okay, this one is wild. In 2013, there was an assassination attempt by this guy from New York, right? And what he was doing, okay, I'm giggling, but it's really not funny. What he did was he created this death ray. And so what the FBI said was that this thing could and was very capable of killing someone from a distance by shooting radiation at them. And so they would never know. It's smellless, you can't feel it.
Yeah.
And then they just dropped it after a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
And so he built this thing and he was going to use it to kill Obama.
I bet the military grabbed it up and was like, thank you so much for your contribution.
Right. The last one that I want to talk about.
Conspiracy theory: Princess Diana. Princess Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris in 1997, 1 year after her divorce from Prince Charles. Conspiracies immediately started with theorists stating key points surrounding the accident. The theories focus on her relationship with Dodi Fade, who died in the limo alongside her. He was supposedly planning to propose to Diana the night of the accident. The theory here is that the royal family had a hand in her passing to stop this marriage. Dodi's father said they were killed because the monarchy couldn't stand the thought of Diana and Prince Charles's sons, heirs to the British throne, having a stepfather who was Egyptian and Muslim. People also believe that she may have been pregnant at the time of the accident. Theorists believe that Diana's medical care after the crash was deliberately sabotaged. Because Diana was treated at the scene for an hour and not immediately rushed to the nearest hospital after this, she was driven slowly to the hospital and then stopped minutes away to supposedly be treated again inside the ambulance. There were 14 CCTV cameras in the underpass, however, not one captured the fatal incident. A note was found months after Diana's passing written by the princess, which read, "My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure and head injury to make the path clear for him to marry."
Something new. I was out with my friends the night that I met you. You looked so handsome, thought you were someone's boo. That was until you showed me that you wanted me to. Ooh, what's happening? Ooh, what's happening? This feeling. 'Cause I've been busy. Too damn long, but